everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Wendy Yee.
And I'm Chris Yee.
Today we're taking a look at Shackleton's Base, thus named for a crater on the moon, Shackleton Crater.
Which was named after an intrepid Antarctic explorer, I think.
Oh, you are building bases on the moon in this game, and even if you play with one module, bringing some tourists in, but for the most part, sending out, it's a worker placement style game where you have 3 different types of workers, which matter on where you send them. And there's a lot more rules to that, so I'll let Wendy go from here.
This is Shackleton Base, and I want to give you kind of a quick view of what everything is on the board. So we have the actual base over here. This is the crater where the base is being built. We have the 3 main action spaces here with the little orange icons. We have the round structure, your reputation track, your player board, and then everyone's going to have a single player power, but I just want to put these out here because there's a variety to pick from. And then we have 3 corporations. There's 7 total in the box, but you're going to pick 3 of those. And these are little mini games that are be going on during the main game. So let's talk about round structure over here. So first off, we're going to start off with the shuttle phase. And this is where players are going to be drafting a shuttle. You're going to be getting the workers that are at the bottom of whatever you draft, and then any resources that are at the top. This will also determine player order based on lowest number going first. So if I were to draft this number 3 over here, I would get these workers, and these would be available for this round. And then everyone else would draft. And then finally, whatever shuttle is left over, those workers are going to come up here to this action space. Then players are going to use their 6 workers to take 6 actions, and they're going to do that 1 worker at a time, 1 turn at a time. The first possible action over here is exploiting the crater, and this is going to determine what action you take based on whatever color of worker that you use. So if I were to take a yellow worker over here, I would place that worker, or whatever color worker that you choose, you'd place it onto one of these spaces, paying the credit cost, and then you would see which ones of these hexes would be activated. Since I'm the green player, I get to activate any space that I have buildings in for free, but then I would have to pay additional costs to the person with the largest building in all of the other hexes that get activated. But then for a yellow worker, I would be getting resources of these little icons here in the middle. Now the red workers give you credit, so that's a way to get money. And then the blue workers allow you to activate these little blue circles over here, and that has to do with the corporations. The next section of action possibilities is the command center over here. Now this, you can actually place any color worker on any track, but if you happen to match the colored worker on the right side, you get a bonus. So for example, we have this track up here. This is the building track. This is where you can actually place a worker, and then you can choose to place out one of your buildings, paying the costs up in the upper left-hand corner based on the building size. This next line over here is the way that you're going to be getting cards. So this is funding corporations. So you're going to come over here, you're going to pay the highest cost shown. So that's going to be this lowest circle on a corporation. And then you're going to be able to choose from these cards over here to purchase. If you have a matching character, you get to do one of the corporate actions. And I'll explain that next, because the next line is actually to do 3 corporate actions. So as you can see, these are blue little gears, and a corporate action is really any one of these gears over here. And like I said, these are little mini games, so I'm not going to explain them all. But you can do any of these gears, or you can choose to do the gears on the reputation track that are lower from where your reputation is. So right now, I only have access to this one down here, which is actually to bump up my reputation twice. Finally, the last action available is to visit the Lunar Gateway, and that over here, what we're going to do is we're going to place out a worker of a particular color, and then you have to take a worker of a different color, and you're going to place it on your player board. So let me explain this player board a little bit more. So this is where we have our buildings. We have the building costs in its region, in the upper left-hand corner here. It has a maintenance cost, but then it also has some sort of benefit for having astronauts in it. And this is one of the ways that you can get astronauts onto your buildings. These little tiny buildings up here are going to be for income resources. These ones over here on the left are going to give you discounts throughout the game. These are kind of instant bonuses. Whenever you build these new buildings, you'll get instant bonuses based on the workers and the colors that are associated with them. And then finally, this last building over here is a way to gain reputation income depending on how many workers are on this building. So finally, after the players have done those actions with all 6 of their workers, then we're going to move on to the maintenance phase. Now, the maintenance phase starts out with players looking at these little astronauts that we put out. So starting from the top space, we're going to be moving clockwise, and we're going to go to the first astronaut that we find. And that astronaut is going to activate any of these rows down here. I'm sorry, not activate. This astronaut is going to look at all these rows down here, and then they're going to be able to go to a building for the person who has the largest building in that line, as well as the building that is closest to them that's largest. So, for example, right now we have the 2 largest buildings are purple and green. So this green one is closest, so green will get this astronaut over here. If this green building was not there and we only had 2 small buildings and a large building, then purple would get this astronaut. Now, finally, this one will go here. It would go somewhere into green's region. Then we would come around and we'd find this next astronaut. This guy is looking down the same row, but he would go to purple because purple is closest to this astronaut. Then players will look at their player board and they'll see, do they have any income? Right now I would be getting one of these nice little titaniums. And then we'll look at maintenance costs. Maintenance costs are dependent on how high your reputation is. So right now purple's only paying 1 per reputation. Is paying 1 total for their reputation, whereas pink and green are going to be paying 2. And then over here we also look and we see there's costs for the buildings that we have out. We've got 1 here, we've got 2 here, and 3 here. If for some reason players can't pay their maintenance costs, then they go down on the reputation track. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and wipe all the rest of the workers off the board so we can start over again next round. Okay, let's talk super briefly about these corporations that we have over here. So I happen to have these 3 set up, and they all do different little mini games. For example, this one over here, you're going to be placing some of your small buildings over here. And this is an area majority thing. So if you have the majorities, each round, different majorities are going to trigger. In this one over here, we have a set of resources that are specific for this corporation. And as you can see, like the cards and stuff will allow you to get those specific resources, as well as these little blue symbols over here. And then you're going to be trading those in to get these little icons. And then if you have a certain amount of these fulfilled, then you can get points. Finally, that top spot up there is going to be those little unique astronauts over there, and they're going to come and they're going to visit. So it's like space tourism. They're going to take up space in your buildings, but then they're going to be worth points when they go back at the end of each round. Like I said before, there's 7 different ones of these corporations, so you're going to pick a variety, and that's going to give you a lot of your strategy and what you're working towards in the game. The rest of this is all going to be the same, but this really is a big changer of how the game plays and feels. So just as a last quick recap, remember we're going to do the shuttle phase where we draft our workers, we're going to take our actions, and then we're going to do our maintenance. We're going to do that whole thing 3 times, and then the end game will be triggered, and we'll count up all the points and see who's the winner.
Okay, one thing to know going into this game is that the setup for this game is pretty intense. There's a lot to set up for the game itself, and then each of the 3 modules has its own setup, which I don't think is particularly egregious, but there's still some setup. And then explaining the rules. I would like to not teach this next time I play it. There's a lot.
It's a little hard, too, because the corporations are tied into the main mechanism so much because they're those little blue tokens that you're getting. So you're like, you get a blue token when you explain the basic actions. But then they're like, yeah, but what does the blue token do? And you're like, well, it depends.
It can move you up this track. Other things also. Worry about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, hold on. You know what I mean? Oh, you can get a gear action. Oh, what does the gear actions do? Hold on.
I'm not going to tell you.
And I don't mind teaching this one. It's a trickier teach, but also because of what you're talking about, those extra modules don't just feel like tacked on endgame scoring modules. They really are kind of baked into the fabric of the gameplay itself.
Yes, comparing it to another game that recently came out, SETI, where the modules are extra to the base game, these are in the game. You are playing with these 3 modules. You can't play, if there was no modules, there would be almost no game.
Right.
Right. Yeah. SETI has more rules, I think, inherent to kind of the game before the reveals of stuff. This one is it's hard to measure. Like, this is a tricky kind of game to teach and to play and stuff because not play, but to teach. And to even be the person who's like, let's slot a new module in there. Okay, hold on, I have to kind of relearn some stuff. That being said, they did a great job providing instruction pages on each of those factions.
Double-sided.
Sure. And I think the rule book's well done. And I actually think the components for this game are very well done. They're great. They work well.
And I actually like the tuck boxes.
Yes.
Because they're well labeled and they're distinctive for each faction, each corporation.
I often throw tuck boxes away. I have not thrown these away, mostly because they fill the box.
They fill the box. I think they expedite setup.
They do.
I think they work.
Yeah.
I do wish sometimes I wish there was another way to distribute the workers and the money because they're in a tuck box. I'd prefer them. Usually when I have resources like that, they're on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's minor. Now, this game offers a dizzying array of options. This is, if you have someone who has analysis paralysis, I probably wouldn't even show them the cover of this game. That's how, because there's just so many things you can do. You have workers, right? And you can place them out on the map in many places. You're very rarely ever hemmed in where there's not a lot of spots to put people. On the bottom board, it costs money to put people after a while, so it's more expensive. But I have yet to see one of those whole lines get filled up.
I have seen it. It's pretty
It might
tense.
be on the last turn then, right?
Yeah, the last round of the game where
some matter more than others.
Yeah, absolutely. I really need to build these things out because of a few things. I know I'm going to get a lot of astronauts in. I want them for endgame scoring. So I really need to put this 3-piece size module out. Oh, you've made it cost 5 coins now. Still worth it. I find that impressive that, it looks like and it feels like, oh yeah, that's never going to happen. And then it does start to...
Well, what I mean, though, is that there's always... I don't feel like your options narrow too much as the game goes by. They narrow slightly, but there is just so many spots to put them. And then there's 3 cards at each spot, or 9 different cards that you can get.
Sure.
And other things that you can do. And you take the action and says, use the special ability, and you're like, well, on which of the 3 cards? Usually you know already, because you know which one you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind this. I love that there's all these options.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, be warned.
There's a lot of choices. Now with the cards, this is one of those games where they sit on one side of the board. And so if I live on the other side of the board, if I'm not near them, it's hard to see them and figure out what they do. They have a lot of text on them.
They do, but once again, the back of those faction sheets that talk about them have all the cards listed on the back, which is great.
Well, there you go.
And I think that helps.
Stand corrected.
It helps mitigate because I agree. Some games you are at the mercy of where around the table you're seated. That still is a factor, but it's made easy. I think they did a lot of things reasonably to make the experience smoother.
There's still the tiles and things.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not always a big interactive person when it comes to games, but I enjoy the interaction in this because there's that positive interaction, which I didn't really explain in the overview, but as you're putting out solar panels, other people can use them. People can get the benefits of your space that you have your buildings on. They have to give you a little bit of a price if they don't have a building there too, but they can activate those spaces. They can get more stuff from it because someone else has built a building. But then you also have those like line of sight. Whoever has the biggest building gets the astronaut into your board. So there's a lot of interaction, but I don't feel like there's very many moments where someone's like, ha, 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 I've stolen everything from you. And I appreciate that. Like they may get an astronaut that goes in their building that you really wanted, but it's not the end of the game. It's not the end of the world.
I agree. I mean, maybe near the end, like Chris says, when you're
tight.
Getting to the end and it's tight. But there's a lot of things to do. You might buy a card to turn before me, but that happens in all kinds of Euro-style games. I really like the central board and the placing a person and getting the rolling column. I think that works really well. And the color is also useful. While the color does, again, slow the game down a bit. Someone's like, ooh, I'm going to go this road. Now, do I want money, resources, or, the tokens? Yeah. And that's, I don't mind that those options exist. But, again, there's a lot. But I love that putting stuff in a row in column. I'm always a big fan of that.
And as the game progresses, doing that becomes stronger.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to get like 4 building resources from this. Yes, I'm paying a little bit out to some of the other owners, but there's like there's so many good moments like that where you're excited that someone did something that was helpful for them because it's going to be helpful for you as well. And so capitalizing on those moments is big.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not convinced. I'm still, obviously, I'm not going to pretend I know any great strategy with this game. But those middle buildings, the ones that are size 3, are so powerful point-wise at the end of the game, especially if you get multiple of them. Because, when you get the second one, the first one, you get the abilities for that again. Mm-hmm. But people are going to skip because everyone has this burning desire, you need to build your headquarters, right? Because you get your second special ability, and also, look what I just put on the board.
Well, it's like instant win for an astronaut.
Yeah, all those guys are coming my way.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right. Those level 3 ones are huge. You should have one pretty strong by the end of the game. 2 if you can. But I do love that the single space modules, the ones at the top,
they give you the resources.
Those are the income, and that's huge. So, yeah, as you're balancing, like, now versus end game.
Well, and then that's where the modules then come in. If you've got if you have the tourism astronauts that are taking up space on your board, they're not giving you all those incomes, but they're giving you different point incomes. And so, yeah, there's just so much good going on.
I think this is one of those games where I can easily get trapped in doing too much of everything.
Sure.
And you pick a module and kind of slide into that module, but don't let one person run away with one module if possible, because then they will just stomp all over everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is for the size of this box, which you should be ashamed of everyone who's making boxes bigger than this with the smaller games, because there is so much game in here.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. There is the 7 modules and I could play the same 3 modules again instantly after the game. If there was only those 3 modules and they didn't say there were modules and that was just the 3 parts, that would work for me.
I agree.
The fact that there's 7 is just crazy cool.
Yeah.
And mixing them up and down, I don't need an expansion for this. I'm sure they'll make one. But I don't need one because there's just so much content in here, and yet it feels like a really in-depth game. You can't do everything. I love that in games as long as you can do a lot.
Yeah.
And this one lets you do a lot. There will be 3 modules. There's no way you're going to be amazing at all 3 of them. But you can be amazing at one of them and decent at another one. But then also don't ignore the board and putting out there's so much good in this.
There's a lot going on.
Shall we
We're doing
go
scores?
to final scores then?
Yeah, okay, so this is going to sound, because I just have been praising this game all the way up and down, that I'm only giving it an 8. But I like it a lot. I think there's a lot of really good things in it. It's slightly longer than I'd want it to be. Just a smidge with 4. 3 is going to be shorter, obviously, and 3 might be the sweet spot for it. There's a lot, and the teaches, I know Chris said he can teach, there's a lot. The whole game, I'm like, yes, when you put a worker here, you do this. And when a worker goes here, it does this. Those are 2 very different things. Remember that. Yes, the color matters here, so on. No, you don't have to put the color there. You can use any color. You just don't get this bonus, yada, yada, yada. And that's how this module works. But, I mean, once you get past it, I think it's a really solid game. I could see this one going up for me. But right for now, I think it's very, very good at an 8.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to give this an 8.5. I very much like it, and I think that explanation of going through these new modules, I might honestly just stick with a few modules for a few games. You mean like stick with the same ones for a few games?
Yeah.
To get it under my belt. And if I were to teach it to someone, I would definitely use modules that I know well, because there is that upfront cost of, let's play this game. Let's play the new stuff. Okay. Everyone read a different module, I guess, like if we're going to start over. But I think that the graphic design, I think laying it out, having the whole turn structure right there, because it is a very procedural game. There are some moments with that. I appreciate that a lot of that's laid out. And the action spaces, once you know the iconography, you understand where the 3 main action spaces are. And so I think that they lay it out well for how complicated it is. So this is 8.5 for me. I think it's a lot of fun. I think the positive interaction in it is fabulous, and the different colored workers is a cool twist. It's fun to be able to do different things, and I like those decisions.
I'm also coming in at an 8.5, right? We've talked about some of those hurdles, mostly being the onboarding.
Sure.
Outside of that, there's very few downsides of this game for me. I really do enjoy that it reminds me of some of my favorite parts of Paladins of the West Kingdom.
Yes.
You draft those things, you draft those cards or the spaceships that give you a color pool of workers and some resources. So every round you start off with a little bit of a bump in what you end a round, you're like, ooh, I hope I can do something next round. Oh, yeah, there's that draft. Oof, do I take later turn order, but I get a mountain of resources with it to kind of, kickstart the start of my next round? I love that. I've played with so many of the modules. I haven't played with all of them yet, the different corporations, but I agree. There's no reason I couldn't just play the exact same 3 and have a completely great, robust game with that. Slotting one of them out all of a sudden introduces some interesting new dynamic, introduces new cards. Those cards, I think, do a great job of not just giving you special powers for that own corporation, but some of them are just general game powers.
Yeah.
And I love that. So, and then doing a complete overhaul of all 3 of them and throwing 3 new ones in, it's a bit, but it's also doable because the core of this, I think, is well laid out and well explainable and just a very fun game.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Shackleton's Base, Journey to the Moon. They're building this right now, actually.
Really?
I don't know. Oh, that'd be cool.
I was like convinced.
They
Yeah, by
are not.
2026, the roller coaster's opening up
We were
first.
supposed to be on Mars, but
Well, the
2005.
space station has 50 plus leaks in it right now. So
Alrighty. Well, anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Wendy Yee.
And I'm Chris Yee.
I don't think we're ever going to the moon.
Stay on Earth. We got Doritos.
We already did.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel. When I was a kid,
We've never been to the moon!